Dr. Kathleen Martinez, welcome to Underground.
Thanks for the invitation.
Well, it is my pleasure, and I'm thrilled to have you here. We've known each other for a number of years, and I've been a big fan following your exciting work. And so I'm thrilled to have you here. You are on the cusp of perhaps one of the most interesting archaeological discoveries ever. Yeah, it's a perfect fit for Underground. And on Underground, what we do is we feature independently minded archaeologists, of which you are certainly one, anthropologists, historians, and science renegades on controversial topics and themes. And today we're going to talk about an unconventional theory, I would say, not necessarily controversial, but certainly, sort of outside what I think most mainstream conventional thought would lead one. But let's talk about you and a little bit about your background. You have a doctorate in law. You have one of the most interesting backgrounds of any archaeologist that I know. You are an attorney. You're a diplomat. Of course, you're an archaeologist. You were born in the Dominican Republic, and you earned a law degree at 19 years old. That's impressive. You worked as a criminal defense attorney for almost 2 decades. You have degrees in finance and archaeology that you got in Europe and Spain. You've also studied at Brown, and you're known for leading the joint Egyptian-Dominican In Search of Cleopatra project since 2005, with a focus on Taposiris Magna temple in Egypt. You've excavated Your excavations have uncovered hundreds of fascinating artifacts, a large tunnel complex, and potential submerged ruins. You've received numerous awards, and you have an exhibit in the Cairo Museum. You've done lots of television, so folks might recognize you from that. And in fact, you have a special coming up called Cleopatra's Final Secret, which airs in September. So, yeah, it's a great pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Did I miss anything in your background?
um, well, I think you have said enough.
That's enough. Well, I will tell you, you talk to archaeologists about what they do in the field, their research, and most of them have very honorable research agendas and goals, such as trying to establish, motifs on pottery across space and time. And when you ask you what you're doing, you say, "Well, I'm on the quest to find Cleopatra's tomb," and it's like that is the next level of amazing. I bet you get a lot of attention at cocktail parties.
Well, as a matter of fact, yes.
Where are you? Tell us a little bit. We established you were born in the DR, but talk to us a little bit about your background and what brought you to where you are today.
Well, uh, I think it is important to think outside the box. And I came out with this idea after many years of studying Cleopatra's life. I wasn't expecting to uh, to get so clear about those ideas that where the tomb of Queen Cleopatra could be. But when I realized I was on the right track, I went to Egypt. And this is how this project started. And it seems that I was not that wrong. I mean, locating Taposiris Magna as an important archaeological site that has not been seen before. Many has excavated Taposiris for more than 100 years, but within a clear idea of what they were looking for or what was the importance of the site. And this is what made our expedition different because we had a purpose, we have a target when we get there.
Yeah.
And I presented to the Egyptian government, to the Supreme Council of Antiquities, 4 targets. At that time, in 2005, it looked even uh, sometimes it wasn't even possible. One of them is that I believe I could find the foundation plaques of the temple, even though it has been searched for 100 years or more, and no other expedition has ever found it. I thought I could find it, and we did.
Yeah. Well, have you always been interested in Cleopatra as from the time you were a little girl or a young woman?
Yeah. Since I was reading about her, I started getting very interested in Cleopatra as a historical character, but also I was interested in Egypt since I was a kid. And was fuel to this desire is when I have my first meeting with my father discussing about Cleopatra and the way him and all his friends, all intellectuals and professors in the Dominican Republic refers about the queen. And I thought they could be wrong. And this is the first time I challenge what those intellectuals that I admire so much thought about something. It was about Queen Cleopatra.
What do you think they were getting wrong?
Well, Cleopatra has been portrayed in many ways, but the information that we had about her is the one has been written by her enemies, the Romans. It was a propaganda against her that this is the information that reached to us through time. There are other writers, Arab sources, but we don't we from this part of the world we don't know this information until I reach out for them. So the information we have is that the Romans wrote about Cleopatra, and you cannot rely on that information because it was she was an important enemy of Rome.
Yeah. So it sounds like your goal wasn't just to find the tomb, but was also to help sort of recharacterize, reimagine who Cleopatra really was and drive towards a more factual perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes. Why do you think so many people are fascinated with her? I mean, she's probably the most famous, certainly one of the most, if not the most famous woman in history.
She was famous in her time, and she was famous after. Why? Because everything she did, it was very special. She was the first woman to study formally at the museum. She was this woman who was not only a queen, but she thought she could rule the world. She was not afraid to discuss with men in a time where women were, were very restricted in terms of education, but she was a philosopher. She was a doctor in medicine. She was a queen. She was a polyglot. She spoke 9 languages, all the languages of her time. She was capable to communicate with all the countries around Egypt. She was the one, since she was a kid, be next to her father, Ptolemy 12, translating to her father what the diplomats that was sent to Egypt were um, trying to talk to her father. So she was an extraordinary woman. She also was a mother of 4 kids. She was a wife. She was a queen. She was a goddess. And certainly she was able to somehow uh, do things her way. Even she was fighting against the most powerful army in the world. They could not, at the end, took her to Rome. And the way she died made her to become a myth. There's nobody ever came with this idea to die as a goddess, using an Egyptian cobra and not letting the Romans to take her to Rome and parade her and humiliate her.
That's a really interesting point. Not only did she have a famous life, she had a famous death, and there aren't that many people that I guess have the privilege of both. um, so so you're a young woman. You're in the Dominican Republic. You've got these ideas that are unconventional. They're sort of flying in the face of the establishment, and you're trying to break into Egyptology, which itself is rather provincial. It's difficult to access for even the most established of institutions and archaeologists. Did you find that you had a difficult time actually getting yourself fully integrated into the world of Egyptology?
Yes, of course. It was extremely difficult, especially coming from the Dominican Republic. And but I was able to make the decision to go to Egypt and try to pursue this project, meeting with Dr. Sahi Hawass, which was the Secretary General of Supreme Council of Antiquities, and present the project to him. Him as the head of the Supreme Council of Antiquities also is very difficult as a person, and he has to deal with a lot of projects. He had to deal at that time with hundreds of projects that has been presented daily. So it was a challenge only to be able to meet him and discuss a project.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
that
can
was a
imagine.
challenge at that time. He gave me 2 minutes to present my ideas.
2
Uh,
minutes?
2 minutes.
Go.
And then he was there with his watch looking at 2 minutes.
Wow. Well, he's the one who introduced you to me, or I should say, suggested that I get in touch with you, and he had very positive things to say about your research. So no, you certainly broke in. You managed to overcome those barriers and have been quite successful. Let's talk a bit about Cleopatra. You mentioned some of the characteristics of her incredible education. I didn't realize she spoke. Did you say 9 languages? Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
All the languages of her time, but also imagine, I don't know, even today, many people that speak 9 languages.
No, no. I mean, two is you're doing pretty well. Um, so let's talk about when she was the last. We know she was the last of the Ptolemy pharaohs. So she's sort of the terminal Hellenistic period. But talk a little bit about when she was born, where she was born, and a little bit of the circumstances about her position.
Well, I don't know if you're aware that I am writing or rewriting Cleopatra's life from
No.
my point of view, following my theories. And there's things that I believe that are different than the information that we have from Roman and Greek sources. But Cleopatra was the third of three girls that Ptolemy XII had with his wife Cleopatra. We believe the fifth, and her mother disappeared in history. Very few months after Cleopatra was born. So I believe either that she died delivering Cleopatra, her mother, or she came into disgrace with Ptolemy XII because she delivered three girls, and Ptolemy need a heir. He need a boy. So either those two possibilities were happening at that time, or she died delivering Cleopatra. So he remarried to possible a priestess, and he had three kids from that second marriage. I mean Ptolemy the 12th, one girl, Selene, and two boys. And this is when he fulfilled his desire to have a boy. But they were from two different mothers. And Cleopatra doesn't supposed to get to throne because she has two elder sisters. So there were many circumstances that lead her to get the trust of her father, and also the special conditions that she had to make her pro- um, a very smart woman who was capable, that her father believed she could be capable to rule Egypt. So those were the conditions that lead her to become the legal heir of Ptolemy 12. But
Well, yeah.
then she has to face a second problem, because she had to live with a half brother who doesn't want her to be in power, and she faced some problems after her father's death. So Cleopatra, since she was 18 years old, that she became a queen, she started having problems, and she started to develop skills that allowed her to survive. Immediately she was crowned, she had to flee palace, disappear, because they tried to kill her, and she had to go to the desert to survive. So life was not easy for her, but that doesn't mean that all those challenges stopped her. She was ready to conquer the world. And that's why when I think of her, I see her as one of those humans that um, always bring some teaching to all of us, because imagine the situation even today in the Middle East with women, and how she 2000 years ago was able to overcome all those restrictions.
Yeah. Uh, Certainly a survivor. You know, you have four heirs potentially who could take over the throne, or the pharaohship. And as you say she was the third born or the second born? Third born?
It was the third.
Third born. So she certainly was smart because she figured out how to do it. And you know, I can imagine it would have been some tough competition. Um, so her background, you've talked about Ptolemy the 12th. So she would be the 13th generation following Ptolemy I, which
Yes.
was one of Alexander the Great's generals. So we're talking about many generations now of Greek influence and Greek sort of cultural dominance in Egypt. But would you say that she identified? I mean, she's now again multiple generations in Egypt, but she was more. Would you say more Egyptian than Greek, or how would you characterize that?
Yes, I believe she felt more Egyptian than Greek. But of course, when you've been raised with certain culture, that culture that your parents transmit you are part of you. But the way she dressed, and the idea that she was the only one who studied Egyptian as a language, and she wanted to be able to communicate with the Egyptian people, that means that she felt for the Egyptian culture. Also, that she represents herself as Isis, one of the most important goddess in the Egyptian mythology, means that she believed she was part of Egypt. And I also think that when you're a 13th generation being born and raised in a country, you are already
Eh,
part of that country. It's not the
yeah,
first generation, it's the 13th generation.
yeah, yeah, and I think that by modern parlance, we would say she identified as Egyptian, which
Yes.
um, which makes
I
a lot of sense. And for those listening, I just want to set the scene on what was going on in Egypt at the time. And Kathleen, correct me if I'm off the mark on this, but the Hellenistic period is to me one of the most interesting and enlightened periods in ancient history. And in Alexandria at the time, there was the Pharaoh's Lighthouse, which was one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Of course, the library at Alexandria, which was just an archive of the most, you know, incredible books and knowledge that the ancient world had at the time. If you wanted to study, there was probably no better place in the world to research and study than the library at Alexandria, and to live in Alexandria and to be a part of that enlightened society. Am I on point?
Yes, all the scientists and philosophers, the important ones, were there in Alexandria. It was the cradle of the science, the mathematics, geometry, all the books that ever existed were there. So you were in the middle. Cleopatra had the opportunity to be in the middle of the most important university and library that ever existed, and took advantage of that, because you could be there and not be interested, but she was interested. And I believe that she had the opportunity to study formally there in the Library of Alexandria and the museum, the university attached to the library. So that's why she had all these opportunities.
Yeah. Well, of course, tragically, the library burnt down and was destroyed, and over time, I think it was in the 14th century, the Pharos lighthouse collapsed and fell into the Mediterranean. And as a marine archaeologist, I've always been really fascinated by the incredible work that Franck Godiot and some of the French archaeologists have done in the Mediterranean. This, in fact, was some of the most inspiring images from underwater archaeological sites I've ever seen were photographed right there in Alexandria Harbor. And there are some theories that Cleopatra is buried there. What is your sense of that?
I don't think so. Um, I I dismiss this possibility because if we go into all the ancient sources, we know that Octavius was so keen to bring Cleopatra's to be parade in Rome, that when he could not get her alive or dead, he brought one statue of Queen Cleopatra to be parade. And behind that statue, the children of Cleopatra from Antony. So if he had the opportunity ever to bring Cleopatra alive, as he planned at the beginning, and later probably the mummy of Queen Cleopatra, he would have done so. But it was not available, and he, at the end, decided only to bring the statue because he really wanted to portray the image of Cleopatra. And one of the reasons is that he wanted to give a lessons to women not to be like her. So the image of Cleopatra was important as part of the propaganda. So he did not have access to the remains of Queen Cleopatra. And if she would have been buried in the palace, he could have easily take her remains and take it to Rome as a mummy. It would be a big show, because what the Romans did whenever they have a victory, it was a huge parade in Rome. So bringing the mummy of Queen Cleopatra could have been a great also parade and show for the Romans, but it was not possible for him. And that's why I believe that as a lawyer, as a criminal lawyer, if he had had the opportunity to have the the possibility to brought her remains, he would have done it. So it was she was not buried in the royal quarters because it would have been easy for him to do to take it, to take the remains. Also, another theory that has been considered the most accepted one is that she could have been buried in Philae, in the temple of Philae, dedicated to goddess Isis, because she felt that she was a human representation of goddess Isis or her reincarnation. But we have information from the ancient writers that she visited twice in 2 weeks the location where Mark Anthony remains were, and especially that she visited the day before she committed suicide. So immediately have to discard that she visited Mark Anthony in Aswan because it's 1,000 kilometers from Alexandria. So that theory cannot also be considered. And I believe that the idea that she have chosen Philae as the temple where she wanted to be buried with Mark Anthony was taken because it was considered the most important religious center for Isis. But if we had, this is when the idea came, what if we had another temple, a sister temple to Philae, but in the north? Why the only temple of Isis will be, I mean, the biggest one will be only in the south? What if we have another one, which is equally important as Philae, but in the northern coast? What if this temple could be Taposiris Magna?
Yeah.
So
Let me get a quick point of clarification here. Did Mark Anthony die before
Mark
Cleopatra?
Anthony, yes, 2 weeks before he died, August 1st, year 30 BC. And Cleopatra died between the 14th and the 17th of August.
I see. I thought that they had died together, that they commit suicide together. Is that how did he die?
Mark Anthony, historians and ancient writers says that he received the information that Cleopatra was dead. He was fighting and he was winning, actually. At that time, he was fighting against the Roman army, and he was leading the Egyptian army with some allies from the area, and he was winning. So somebody came with the information that Cleopatra was dead, and what ancient writers says that he stopped fighting, even though he was winning, and he entered his tent and he attempted to commit suicide, but it was impossible for him to commit suicide. So he asked one of his servants that help him to die. But uh, that um, that idea only, it's really impossible, because we're talking about Mark Anthony was the leader of an special forces, the Fifth Legion. To be a leader of special forces, you have to be a type of man that you're not afraid of anything, because you cannot be the second in charge of the Roman army and be a coward and be in charge of the most important elite forces. And how you will be the leader of those forces if you are incapable of killing or fight as you've been trained? Those generals at that time were they have their own codes of behavior, and they've been trained in a different way that even uh, we believe our special armies and forces are today. We see those men of honor in they have another way of thinking completely different that the normal citizen, and it's impossible. In history there's no ever any general that has been committed suicide for love. So Mark Antony wouldn't be the first one. They can commit suicide for honor. They can commit suicide if they lose a battle and they don't want to be captured alive. But they will never, in history ever, you never known any general that has ever committed suicide for love. As a matter of fact,
That's interesting. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if Cleopatra would have died, it would be much better for Mark Antony uh, to continue his ideals without Cleopatra, because for him Cleopatra was a problem in front of the Romans. But on the opposite, when Cleopatra lost Mark Antony, it was the end for her, because she could be a queen, but she could never lead an army. She will never, any general will follow Cleopatra's orders. That's why she need a man to lead the army. So the positions that between Anthony and Cleopatra, the roles were very different.
Hmm.
That's why when Mark Antony died in Cleopatra's arm, she knew it was the end for her. Because even though she had the army, none of those militaries would follow her. So it was the end for her. But for Mark Antony, no, it would be easier. So when Mark Antony received this information that Cleopatra was dead and he was winning. All the ancient writers said, Plutarch, Diocletian, he was winning. He had no reason to go and commit suicide. He was a victim of a plot. The same like Julius Caesar was victim of a plot. In Rome, the Romans were famous for those plots against each other when they were in power. The same happened between Pompey and Julius Caesar. The same happened between Octavius and Mark Antony. And all of them they could not retire. They ended up dead by assassination. And if they killed Julius Caesar in the Senate in front of all the Roman people and all the Roman senators, why they wouldn't kill Mark Antony in the military camp in Alexandria?
Huh.
So
Huh. That's a fascinating assessment. I was unaware of those details. So, um, is it still? Do you believe that Mark Antony and Cleopatra are interred together in the tomb?
yes, all the ancient writers confirm this information. There's no one ancient writer who says differently. They are together. That was Cleopatra's plan. She was losing her throne, and she was losing Egypt and her whole empire and all her fortune. She was one of the richest women of her time, and it's lately there are some studies that says that her fortune was equivalent and $80 billion today.
Wow,
So Cleopatra was
incredible!
the richest woman on earth at the time. And the alliances that she made with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, also, they needed her. She needed the army, but they need Cleopatra's fortune for their own military purposes.
Hmm. That's a fascinating dynamic. Okay, let's get back to the hunt for the tomb here. So you've eliminated the area to the south where Mark Antony died, and of course the same thing. You don't think the Cleopatra's Palace area that collapsed in the Mediterranean in the 14th century is likely to be a location of her burial for reasons you explained. So obviously you've been working at Taposiris Magna for 20 years now, which is it about 20 miles west of Alexandria?
Well, it's 45 kilometers. It's
Okay,
a little more than
45
20.
kilometers. Yes. Um, why Taposiris Magna?
I made a map of ancient Alexandria. I consider that if we know that Cleopatra travels the same and went to the location where Mark Antony, where she chose a place for Mark Antony to be buried, and she visited the day before she committed suicide and came back because she was a prisoner of Rome at that time, and she was stayed in the palace, waiting to be taken to Rome. And she visited this place and came back the same day. The next day, she committed suicide in the royal quarters in the palace. So, what distance was she capable to go and come back? No more than 50 kilometers. So I start searching all those temples around the royal quarters that were not more than 50 kilometers. I found 21 of those. And then I started studying carefully to whom those temples were dedicated, what was the importance of that temple, the constructions, the architecture, the location, and find one which was Taposiris Magna, 45 kilometers west of Alexandria, which is the only temple all over Egypt that there's no information about it. There was all those temples were described by the priests. We know we have, even though those temples, some of them doesn't exist anymore, or they're very little remains of them, or they are underwater today, sunken because of the earthquakes and tsunamis that has um, hit Alexandria and the northern coast. We know the names and the existence of those temples. For example, where God is working, there doesn't they those disappeared centuries ago, but Strabo described in details the location, and this is how Frank Gorio, for example, located them. So we have information about all those temples except Taposiris Magna. Nobody knew who built this temple, to whom it was dedicated, and it's one of those temples which is standing up today, which is in very bad condition. Most of the temple has been destroyed, and that was a red flag for me. I said, why, if we have information about all of those other temples, why we don't know much about this one? And I thought it was important to work in this temple with systematic excavations, if I had the opportunity, to try to get more information about this site.
Do you think that the lack of information available was deliberate, done by? Okay, they don't want people poking around Taposiris Magna.
Yes. And then, because there's so many very interesting anecdotes. Later, in recent times, um, that area was the scenario for the Second World War in Africa, in that area. So many things has happened. And later, one of the Egyptian presidents decided to build his home in the area, and then it was again an area where the access was restricted again.
Hmm. Very interesting. You're right. Because I remember you and I chatting about this in the past when we were discussing some of the challenges with doing the marine archaeological work. It was in association with the president's compound and some military assets. So, yeah, that's very interesting. Okay, well, you have made some incredible finds there. I mean, there's images of you descending into down shafts and into tunnels and finding burials and mummies and busts of Cleopatra and incredible numbers of artifacts. What are some of the more significant finds that you would say point in the direction that, hey, this is likely the place where Cleopatra has been buried?
As you know, the most important discoveries that an archaeologist could have is they are inscriptions, because those are the ones who really give us a clue of uh, the importance of the place, information about the location. So when we discover the foundation plaques of the main sanctuary, and I was able to prove that the main sanctuary was dedicated to goddess Isis, immediately we were able to link the temple to Queen Cleopatra. Because if she had the opportunity to be buried somewhere that she chose, and she believed she was a human representation of goddess Isis, and even the way she died using an Egyptian cobra, an aspid, related her and linked her to Isis, because among the qualities of the goddess is she was a magician, and whenever she was in trouble, she was able to create, the mythology says, a snake, a cobra that could damage or save her enemies. Cleopatra was able, in the eyes of the Egyptian people, to let them know, I am really Isis. I'm not dying as a slave or as a prisoner. I'm dying as Isis, and I'm creating this cobra that is getting me free from my oppressors. And I will now go with my husband, Mark Anthony, in another form of existence where we're going to be free. And I care about the remains of my husband. I was able to secure his remains. I put it in safe place, and now we are joining together for eternal life, which was the most important thing in the Egyptian religion, the afterlife. So she was able to achieve success in another form of existence. And if she did all of that, and the way she died was the beginning of a religious act, and it had to end with her to be buried in a temple of Isis, her mother. So if Taposiris Magna was a temple dedicated to Isis, and not any temple, the most important temple dedicated to Isis in the north, there is a big possibility that the tomb of Cleopatra could be there. But then there is another question that raised after we discovered the foundation plates of the main sanctuary inside what we call Taposiris Magna, because if the temple is dedicated to Isis and there's no evidence of Osiris, where is Osiris? Because the whole region is named after Osiris. So this is when the idea that there could have been two temples. One, the one standing up today, dedicated to Isis, and there's another temple that could be either on land or underwater today. And then if we add the discovery of a tunnel that goes from Taposiris Magna, the temple itself, to the Mediterranean Sea, and then a causeway also that we discover with sphinx and plinth with the statues of the pharaohs going also to the Mediterranean Sea. So it opened up the idea that it could, when Alexandria city collapsed in 3rd century, and where and other earthquakes later on that destroyed Alexandria, why it was impossible that 45 kilometers west of Alexandria could not collapse. And what we know today as Taposiris Magna is only a part of this huge complex. So
that's amazing. I remember I don't remember exactly when it was, a couple of maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I remember where I was when I saw the article pop up online that you had found this tunnel that had water in it, and it had characteristics that were similar to the way that the Greeks built their tunnel systems, correct? And because of that sort of architectural connection, you were able to say with a high degree of confidence that this was Hellenistic period, and this would have been built likely during the time of or associated with the Ptolemy pharaohs, the tunnel.
yes, the tunnels is an exact replica of Eupalino's tunnel in island of Samos. And also, it is very interesting because the mother of Alexander the Great was the highest priestess of Samothracia. So we are getting connection between the Hellenistic period and that specific location of Taposiris Magna. Also, we have now archaeological evidence through systematic excavations that it was a settlement, a Greek settlement, even before the construction of Taposiris Magna. Then, recently, in the last mission, we discovered the original Greek temple before Taposiris Magna. This is something new that we haven't finished excavating, but it has all the architectural elements that we discovered scattered through the temple. So the latest discoveries lead us to believe or have archaeological evidence that it was a settlement even before the temple that we know today. And that temple was destroyed to build what we know today as Taposiris Magna. But they were usually two temples, as we see normally in the Valley of the Kings, where you see a temple dedicated to the god and another temple connected, dedicated to the goddess. So there's so much still to need discover at Taposiris Magna. Plus, there is a huge necropolis, which is all around a replica of a lighthouse. This is the most important structure in the northern coast is the lighthouse, the replica of the lighthouse, and we have it also at Taposiris Magna. The important thing about this structure is that we need to determine if it was used also as a lighthouse and as a tomb, because we were able to excavate or complete the excavation of the bottom of the lighthouse and also brought important information.
You're having way too much fun. This is incredible what you're able to find out there. So back to the tunnel, because I think this is really interesting, and then I want to talk about the causeway because I was unfamiliar with the discovery of the causeway. But you discovered this tunnel, and there's some film I believe, of you actually making the discovery on the internet. And the tunnel leads under the temple and straight towards the Mediterranean. And now you're saying that on the top, there is a causeway you've located that had statues lining it, and it is also heading towards the Mediterranean. But you believe that the Osiris sort of, yin and yang sort of, the duality type temple is Isis and Osiris. The Osiris temple would have been in an area that has subsided. You said possibly during the 3rd century, and then maybe later in time from earthquakes and other kind of tectonic or seismic activity. But that there's a lot more to be found underwater in the Mediterranean off Taposiris Magna.
Yeah, The most interesting thing is that, as we talked before, is that nobody ever has been able to dive in this area because of the submerged house of the president of Egypt. And it became all that area in front of Taposiris Magna as a military zone. So not even from the Ministry of Antiquities, that the underwater department, they have explored everywhere in Egypt except this area. So that's why there's many things happening about the the archaeological sites that it's been a mystery. So it was only 2 years ago when this area was allowed to be explored even by the own Egyptian team of the underwater department. So it's very new. We really don't know what we could find there. But if you look into the east of Alexandria, where Frank Gorio again is working, Heraklion, Tanis, on that new area that has been discovered, there's a lot. There is a port. It was a very important port where all those came from um, uh, far east will stop there. What about if Taposiris Magna was also a port which is located around the same, because this is like 40 kilometers from Tanis Heraklion was like 40 kilometers from Alexandria city. What is in the west also? For those ships that came from Mother Greece and all of those have to stop there. So they were protecting Alexandria from both flanks, from the east and from the west. We don't know because there's no much information about Taposiris Magna as we have information from the east and from the rest of Egypt. But from that part specifically, there's a lot of voids and lack of information. We know by some information from Strabo that there were certain islands in the northern coast, but we don't know anything else. So there are possibilities that are opening up now through um, archaeology. And I contacted Dr. Robert Ballard 2 years ago and asked him for help uh, to help me to locate if they were or not man-made structures underwater. And it was for me a great experience because I didn't have experience underwater. I never thought this project will go underwater. But once we reach a tunnel, that when we approach the actual highway, starting getting water, and then we saw it continue under the highway, beneath the highway, inside a modern resort, and go into the sea, we immediately realized that there was a connection between the site today and the Mediterranean Sea. We don't know the extension of what we can discover there because, as you know, 2 seasons underwater are nothing.
Yeah, it certainly it's a good start, but I suspect there's a lot more to do. Well, and I'm glad you've brought that up because I know we had chatted about this in the past, and I ran into Dr. Robert Ballard at the Explorers Club annual dinner about a year and a half ago, and we had a conversation, and he told me, you know, I hopefully I'm not jumping the gun here, but he told me you all found some incredible things there. There were structures, it looks like temple foundations. He didn't say specifically, but that there was a lot of architecture under the water there. Now, about 4 or 5 months ago, I interviewed Zahi Hawass on Underground, and I asked him what was found, And he said nothing was found. So I was quite confused. It sounded like, in one story you found Atlantis, and another you found absolutely nothing. So, can you clarify if indeed something was found during your marine archaeological exploration off of Taposiris Magna?
Well, the first, we only have worked 2 seasons of 2 months, which is nothing. But the first season with Dr. Robert Ballard, the idea was to use technology. It's today that area is open sea. Is As a matter of fact, is black um, flag area with open sea. So it's a very dangerous area to dive, but that's why I felt I didn't have the experience. So I contacted him to see if he was interested in the project. He replied immediately, and we put together the plans to use multi-beam echo sounder, to use side scan sonar, and different kind of equipments to bottom profile in order to try um, to find some evidence if it was if there's some remains of human activity. This is the first step. We cannot jump into a discovery because it would take years. Frank Godio has more than 20 years working in the area. Is first you have to go step by step. First, if you have technology available, that's the first step. Try to locate places which will be of your interest. So we start this project, and then with the presence of Dr. Robert Ballard and myself, the Egyptian Navy decided to join the mission. When they joined the mission, they brought all that information that was not available to public. Of course, they have all the maps and all of that that you cannot find online, or they have this information, and that was crucial for us. And then uh, with those informations and the important presence of the Navy, we located 5 important areas that
Okay.
are of our interest. What we were
Awesome.
searching at this first exploration, we were searching only for some evidence of human activity. This is the first step. So we ended the first season with that information. Then, as you know, you do all those, you use that technology, but then you need the experts to study the results of that raw data and give you the result. Is like when you go to a doctor and you perform some analysis, you need later somebody to analyze and study that. So for last season, we, with all that information in hand, we start sending divers to the locations, and then we start discovering anchors. We start discovering human activity. We start discovering remains structures that look man-made, but after 2,000 years, you know better than me, all those structures are covered with coral. We need to get permission to drill. We need permissions to remove the sand. We need to do other steps in order to clean the area. We need to vacuum. We need to do things in order. We know now that the the after 2,000 years, there's a lot of sediment there. We
Yes.
need to remove the sediment in order to locate things. But if we are seeing a huge amount of pottery and we're seeing a huge amount of anchors, we know we are in the presence of a port. because that's
are the
what's
anchors is the pottery and the anchors, these objects that you can recover and you can analyze now, are they consistent, associated with the Hellenistic period?
well, yes, yes, they are. Yes. And when once you work in Egypt, you have to be very specific of the activities that you will do while you are during their season. So you need permission um, to extract, to remove those pieces from the water. You need a special permission. So even though you discover in one season, you cannot take it out without a special permission. You don't know yet if the authorities in Egypt want those objects to be removed at once. You need to follow some rules and some procedures, but what we can do now is we photograph them. Our specialists in pottery study them, and this is a beginning of a huge project. We don't know now where it's going to take us because this is the beginning. It's very early, but I think we have been very successful. At least we located for now 5 interest locations. The divers would have to excavate. I became a diver myself, but I don't have that experience. I I dived for the first time last season.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you need a team of marine archaeologists to help out.
Yes, yes, I do.
I might know some. What do you think you might find there? Just speculate a little bit.
At least I want uh, to discover the remains of a possible port that we've been looking for. Of course, this huge for this because when you start in sometimes when you start a project, you don't know how things will develop. But once you start making discoveries, those discoveries are the ones, and the site itself is the one that leads you to the next step. Once we discover the tunnel and we excavate this tunnel for more than 10 years, for more than 10 seasons, and I thought it would be a time where this tunnel will return back to the temple, but the tunnel did not return. The tunnel continues under the highway and under a modern resort and took me to the Mediterranean Sea. But I wonder, and I think any scientist will wonder too, why this, I mean, the building of, to build this tunnel to cut the bedrock 25 meters underground, cutting the bedrock is a huge task. And of course, those tunnels has been used as an aqueduct also. But an expert was able to let me know that with this amount of water that goes into the aqueduct, you can feed 50,000 people. So why you will need this amount of water only because you were have nothing to do and you will start chiseling the bedrock for nothing? Those huge projects, they were serving needs of the time.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
you will not make this human effort. How many people died uh, cutting the bedrock and making this tunnel to run from 3 kilometers? It's a huge uh, endeavor that had a meaning at that time. And if you need to send water to more than 20 or 30,000 people, we're talking about a settlement. Why you will need this huge amount of water
Hmm.
to be sent from one place to another? And was a temple dedicated to Osiris, located in an area close to the Mediterranean Sea, and is it sunk underwater as a result of those powerful earthquake that destroyed Alexandria city. We know now that there 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 are 4 kilometers of the coast that are in ancient times exist and now are underwater. What could have been between the temple that we know today and those 4 kilometers that we're missing?
So you're saying 4 kilometers out into the Mediterranean
Into
have
the
gone up?
Mediterranean, into the
Wow,
Mediterranean.
that's a lot.
Plus, plus, there we search for all the ancient maps, and we know now that it was a peninsula in front of Taposiris Magna. So, plus, beside any other structure, it was a peninsula that there's no. I mean, there's no information today, but even Strabo mentioned this big, huge rock in front of Taposiris Magna, where in ancient times they used it for many purposes, but special for religious purposes. So we don't know what can be found there. But
Yeah.
we know today through texts, inscriptions that we have discovered that Taposiris Magna had uh, was the most important religious center for Isis in the north, that it was considered a sacred land, and it was one of those that the Ptolemies supported more than any other temple. It was a huge, huge complex, which also dedicated to the production of wine, the production of, we have killed of a huge production of pottery. It was a place where also the bath that has been discovered by Breccia and excavated by the French mission. So it was a place where was very active during the whole Ptolemaic period. Also, it continues through the Roman period. We know by archaeological evidence that it functioned at least for 6 centuries. There's so much that we are putting together through systematic excavation, but I believe the major discoveries will be made um, in the underwater part of this project.
Yeah. Well, you still have it sounds like a pretty big search area to continue your quest for Cleopatra's tomb out there. Congratulations, by the way. This is incredible to hear, and I'm very excited to see what future research does out there. And you have these 5 target areas, which sound very interesting. You know, clearly there's anthropogenic structures and architecture out there. So that, whether I would assume that based on the associated artifacts, it is fair to say that those structures predate the sinking and they weren't brought out and dropped down necessarily in the construction of some sort of a wharf or harbor or something after the fact. You think that the structure that you found out there is consistent with the kind of architecture that would have predated the subsidence. So you do believe you found materials that are associated chronologically with Taposiris Magna.
Yes, we have found not only, I mean, as I told you, this is the beginning of this project. We cannot say uh what we have still 100% because it's a beginning. We need to wait and do other seasons, maybe 1 or 2 more, in order to have a more clear idea of what we have. But I feel very identified with Frank Godio. I believe, from my point of view, he's one of the greatest um, archaeologists that in the modern time, because I don't see anybody else that have made so many discoveries as him. But he's been a victim also of the controversy at the beginning when he started his project, that nobody believed in him, and but he proved himself.
Yeah, you sure
He proved,
did.
and what he's doing are bringing back wonders and incredible objects that nobody have ever seen in this modern time. So sometimes what you have to do is work hard and work hard and work hard, and after that, when you start getting the result of your work, um, you can prove yourself. And this is what I've been doing. I know, because I don't come from those famous universities of developed country, and always there is in the Egyptology world, uh, always many theories, and it's good. That's very good, that theories that you were able to think freely and uh, bring results from many sources. Sometimes, um, the from my point of view, the most important thing is to work hard, to have uh, goals that you can follow, and this is what we're doing at Taposiris Magna. We are working very hard. We have now important evidence, new evidence that have changed what has been written before, and we believe we will um, ended up adding very important information to the Ptolemaic periods and the Hellenistic world. And we will continue working hard. The project is getting very excited every season. We ended up and looking forward to the next season, because there's many things that we left behind and we need to know what will happen. And one of the things that make me more excited is what will happen in the underwater part of the project this coming season that will start in September. This is the only project that I know today that it has an on land excavation and underwater, that make it special also.
Yeah. So let me ask. I do want to ask about next season, but I can't help but to go back to the tunnel just one last time. Can you put an ROV or a technical diver into the tunnel and swim to the extent, or have you done something similar at this point?
No, I haven't done that yet.
Okay, I know some guys. They're really crazy.
Okay.
They dive in the aquifer here in Florida. But yeah, that and I can get you an ROV. No
Yeah,
cost. Just let me know. I would
I'm
I,
interested.
that would be very interesting. Because you may just run into rubble. You never know,
Exactly.
but it
Yep,
certainly would
but
be worth a try.
it's worth it to try.
Let's do it. Okay, so next field season, which I know you're leaving for in like a week or two,
Yeah.
um, are you going to be getting into the water again? What's the plan?
We have, as I told you, 5 locations already that are of our interest, and we want to dive there and excavate. This season, we got the permits to excavate, properly excavate, because since we didn't know at the beginning what results the technology will brought, we were just exploring. Now we're this season we would start excavating some areas. They There are some difficulties because we are working from the seashore. We have no get a permit to have a boat there to serve the excavation. So we're doing it from the seashore, and there are some days that it's very difficult to get out in the sea. We don't have this is an area which, as I told you, it's a military zone, so they are giving us all their support, but the support, considering the area, has a lot of restrictions.
Yeah.
So we have, as I told you, to use zodiacs and go from the seashore. That's difficult, and then we have to go several kilometers into the sea, and it's there are some complications also. um it's open sea, the current is very strong, so we have some uh challenges, and we are trying to overcome those challenges. But sometimes we go to a location, and we set everything there, and then next day, they for example, we set our points and everything, but then sometimes the fishermen came and they stole our so our points, and then they disappear. So we are facing different situations that make the project more challenging.
um, we just lost a video feed. Kathleen, are you still there?
Here, hello.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, maybe DPVs, or there might be some other technology. We'll talk offline, but yeah, that's very interesting. All right, so hypothetically, let's say that you find some sort of submerged chamber, you're able to get an ROV in, and there's this, lying in a sarcophagus is a very well preserved mummy, and there's an image of Isis on the wall behind the sarcophagus. How do you prove that is Cleopatra?
I don't know. I haven't dismissed the possibility that I what I believe is that that location of Taposiris Magna could be the final resting place of Queen Cleopatra and Mark Antony. But I cannot tell you now that we are not considering the area of the necropolis of one of those places where we could find the tomb. We are exploring the whole area, and what we know is that the tomb that we're looking for should be intact if it's there, because nobody has ever thought of it, and we already have excavated and explored and studied all the tombs that has been looted in ancient times. And if we will continue, we believe that they are we have a projection that they are still some tombs that we will be excavating in the coming seasons. We will continue our excavation on land, and then we also continue the project underwater. I am not, I cannot say, because it's a theory, that there for sure there is another temple dedicated to Osiris, and that temple is underwater today. That's a theory, but it could have exist another temple and it's on land and has not been discovered. We don't know, because we only have excavated around 40% of this complex. And as you know, in archaeology, things can change in 1 minute, and you can make this huge discovery. But I believe there's no other place all over Egypt that reunites so many conditions to be chosen by Queen Cleopatra as Taposiris Magna. I will continue searching for her, but in the meantime, all the discoveries that we have today has been worth it, and it's what we are adding to Egyptology.
My gosh, oh, it's incredible, and the finds that you've made, um, outside of specifically those things related to Cleopatra are tremendous, and as people can see in the museum of in Cairo, where your exhibit is on display. So it's absolutely fascinating, and if you do find the tomb and it's intact, um, it will be one of the most, if not the most important archaeological discovery, certainly in the last few centuries. And it will be studied and certainly celebrated for many years to come. And so I really hope that works for you. And if there's any way that I can be helpful or my team can be helpful, of course, let us know. We'd love to be able to be a part of that. I want to, for those listening, please check out Dr. Kathleen Martinez. She's on Facebook, she's on Instagram, and she has a really great documentary coming up. It's airing on Disney and Hulu September 25th. So in about 4 weeks time. And when it comes on, just know that Dr. Martinez is going to be in Egypt at that moment, hopefully uncovering Cleopatra and Mark Antony in their watery grave, or possibly upland. We don't know, but gosh, there's just, it's so fascinating, and congratulations to you, and thank you so much for coming on Underground, Kathleen.
Thank you, Michael, and I expected to see you maybe soon in Egypt.
Please, I would love that. I've been there. I love it. I'd love to go back. Well, I hope everybody listening can ponder the. Oh, I'm sorry.
You have never been to Taposiris?
No, I haven't. No, I have not. I'll tell you what I did do is I did climb the Khufu pyramid late at night in 1997. But
Wow.
I didn't tell Zahi that, but I'll tell you. But yeah, everybody listening, ponder the implications, and just keep in mind how fascinating archaeology is here in the 21st century. Lots of tremendous discoveries yet to be made. So thank you, Kathleen, and we'll see y'all soon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.